All right, let's dive into this deep dive on Balkrishna Industries. Most people know them as BKT. We're going to break down their Q3 FY25 results, really try to get a feel for, you know how they're doing?
You bet. Yeah.
You sent over, well, their financial report, of course, and then some of the questions from the analysts on their earnings call and
Mhm.
their investor presentation look like a really great mix to get the full picture here.
Yeah, it is. I think one of the most interesting things right off the bat is that BKT keeps saying, challenging market, but their numbers are telling a different story.
Right.
They're seeing some real growth, especially in those first 9 months of the fiscal year.
Yeah. Let's jump into those numbers. Sales volume is up 5% year over year for Q3,
That's good.
which is good. But
Yeah.
that 11% growth over the 9 months is even more impressive. Clearly, they're doing something right.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just sales volume. I mean, their total income, so everything they're bringing in, is up 11% for the quarter and 16% for the 9 months. And, that translates into some pretty serious profit.
Yeah, you're telling me. Standalone EBITDA, so that's the profit from their main operations. That's up 9% for the quarter, and then a huge 22% jump for those 9 months. And then they're seeing that growth in their profit after tax, too,
Right.
which is jumping 42% for Q3 and 32% for the 9 months.
Oh.
Talk about defying a challenging market, but I'm curious, what exactly are they doing that's letting them, outperform in this environment?
That's the big question, right? So to understand that, I think we have to look at how they're doing across different regions. It's
Yeah.
kind of a mixed bag. Some bright spots, but also some areas where, maybe there's a bit of concern.
Yeah. Let's start with the elephant in the room, Europe. It's their biggest market, but they are seeing a degrowth there.
Hmm.
The analysts in the conference call were definitely kind of pressing them on this, and it sounds like BKT is concerned as well.
Yeah, and with good reason. I mean, you think about all the economic and geopolitical stuff that Europe's faced this past year. Makes sense that they're struggling a bit there.
It does. It makes their strong performance in other areas even more impressive, though. India and the Americas both saw growth,
Right.
which I guess shows that focusing on those markets is paying off.
Yeah, absolutely. But what really stands out to me is that rest of world segment.
Yeah.
That's where they saw the biggest growth. Makes you wonder what's going on in those markets that's driving that.
They're saying it's because of two things: brand investments and a wider range of products. So they've been, tailoring their products to the needs in these regions and trying to build up their brand. Seems to be working.
Yeah, it's a smart approach, right? Like instead of trying to do this one-size-fits-all thing, they're adapting to each region,
Right.
which is especially important in those rest of world markets. It's a real mix of different places.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got brand strength, product strategy, but what else is contributing to their success?
Well, one thing that jumps out from their investor presentation is all this capital expenditure they've got going on,
Hmm.
especially the investment in this new off-the-road tire plant,
Hmm.
or OTR.
Yeah.
That's a real sign that they're committed to future growth, right? I mean,
Oh,
they're expanding their capacity in a big way.
it's like they're getting ready for the needs of these growing economies and making sure they're the ones supplying them. So we've got strong branding, a good product strategy, and targeted investments. Seems like a recipe for success.
It does, but, they're not operating in a bubble here.
Right.
There are always challenges, even for a company as well-positioned as
It's
BKT,
true.
and some of those challenges are starting to pop up.
Oh, yeah. There's always a catch, right? No business is immune to headwinds.
Yeah.
So, what are the potential storm clouds gathering for BKT?
Well, the conference call showed a couple of big concerns.
Oh.
First, the cost of raw materials.
Mm.
They expect those to go up in the next quarter, and that could really hurt their profit margins.
Yeah, that's never good news. Everybody's feeling inflation these days. But for a company like BKT that uses so many different materials, it could be a real problem. What else are they worried about?
That weakness in Europe is still a big question mark. No one's really sure when things are going to stabilize there, and that uncertainty makes it hard for them to plan.
Makes you wonder, I mean, Europe's their biggest market.
Right.
How long can they offset those struggles with growth in other places? And then there's that whole global economic slowdown thing happening.
Hmm.
They didn't specifically mention it, but it's definitely something that could affect their performance.
It's like they're walking a tightrope, you know, trying to keep growing while dodging all these potential problems. Makes you realize that even with a strong foundation, there are things outside your control that can mess things up.
For sure. It's not just about what you do internally, it's about how you adapt to everything happening around you. Okay, so rising costs, Europe being uncertain, and a global slowdown sounds like a real
Wow.
test for them.
Yeah, it is. But I wouldn't underestimate BKT. They've been through tough times before, and they're not just sitting around waiting for things to get better. They're taking steps to handle these risks and keep growing.
All right, that leads us to the next part of our deep dive, their strategic initiatives and future outlook. Let's explore how they're planning to deal with all of this and then, come out on top. You know what really stood out to me? That rest of world segment. It's their fastest growing area, but we don't really know why.
Yeah, it's definitely the wild card. Like we said, it's a bunch of different regions, all kind of doing their own thing.
Sure.
So there's not really one clear explanation for why they're growing so much.
Right, it's more complicated than that. But we can make some guesses, right? Based on what we know about these regions and what BKT is doing. I mean, a lot of those markets are developing quickly, which means more demand for infrastructure, construction, agriculture, all stuff where BKT's tires are really important.
Exactly. It's not just about BKT's strategy. It's about riding that wave of economic growth. And they've been preparing for this, right? Expanding their networks, making products for specific needs, and getting their brand out there.
Yeah, they're definitely thinking ahead. It shows that sometimes being in the right place at the right time can be just as important as having the best product.
Totally. But like we said, even with all that going for them, they've got to deal with those challenges we talked about. And that rising cost of raw materials is a big one. They were pretty worried about it on that call.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They even mentioned it could go up like 100 to 200 basis points,
Right, which basically means their raw material costs could jump by 1% to 2%.
which might not sound like much, but for a company as big as BKT, that's a lot of money.
Oh yeah, we're talking millions of dollars potentially.
Especially with all the competition out there, their margins are already kind of squeezed, so how are they going to handle that? Rising costs and possibly slower demand.
Well, that's where this advanced carbon black project gets interesting. Remember, they're making that important tire component themselves now.
Right.
So they're not relying on other companies as much.
So it's a new way for them to make money.
Exactly. But it also protects them from those price swings. If carbon black gets more expensive, it won't hurt them as much.
Really smart move, especially now. By controlling more of their supply chain, they're kind of creating a safety net.
It's like building a buffer against a storm.
And then there's that new OTR plant. It's not just about keeping up with demand, it's about getting bigger to take advantage of future growth. If they can produce more, they can lower their costs.
Yeah, they're playing the long game,
Mm.
banking on that rest of world segment to keep growing and making sure they can handle it.
And they're not just focusing on factories and materials either. They brought in a new senior president for strategy and business development, someone with tons of experience.
Right, they're building a real powerhouse of expertise to lead them into the future.
It's like they're saying people are just as important as the infrastructure.
Definitely. So even though there are some bumps in the road ahead, BKT seems to be tackling them head on, turning those risks into opportunities.
Exactly. It's not about avoiding the storm, it's about building a ship strong enough to weather it. Speaking of the future, we've got to talk about BKT's strategic outlook and what it all means. Are they going to reach those big goals they've set? What are the potential pitfalls and opportunities they're facing? Let's get into that in the final part of our deep dive. Okay, so we've talked about a lot with BKT. Their financials are looking good, even with the market being tough. They're making smart moves in key areas, and they're putting money into their future. But here's the big question. What does their outlook tell us, really?
It tells me they're not just trying to get by. They want to come out of this even stronger, but like with any journey, there are going to be some risks.
Let's talk about those risks. We touched on the global slowdown and raw material costs going up, things BKT can't really control.
Right, but they can definitely affect how well BKT can carry out its plans. Even the best plans have to change when things happen outside.
And then there's the competition. A lot of companies make off-highway tires. BKT can't just assume they'll hit that 10% market share goal just because things are going good now.
Yeah, we got to keep innovating and doing things differently. It's not enough to be a good company. You got to be the best, the most efficient, or offer something unique that nobody else has.
So how are they tackling these challenges? We've talked about the new OTR tire plan and the advanced carbon black project. These aren't just quick fixes, they're strategic moves.
Yeah, that OTR plan is huge. It lets them produce way more to meet that future demand, especially from those rest of world markets. And that extra capacity could actually help them save money.
It's like they're taking a potential problem, those rising costs, and turning it into an advantage by producing more. And it all connects to their market share goals. They want more of the pie, not just to survive.
Right. And they're not stopping there. The Advanced Carbon Black project helps them control their supplies better, so they're not as affected by price changes. But it's also about being innovative.
So they can potentially make new tire materials that perform better and last longer. That gives them an edge.
Exactly. It's about creating value, not just saving money.
And we can't forget about the people side of things. Bringing in a new senior president for strategy, that's a smart move. They're getting someone who really understands the global tire market. That shows they're serious about this.
They're not just focusing on the physical stuff. They're investing in the people and the know-how to deal with this complex global market.
So what does this all mean for people following BKT? Investors or just people interested in the industry? They seem to be doing everything right for long-term success.
Yeah, they've got a solid foundation, a clear plan, and they're willing to adapt and invest. And they care about sustainability and social responsibility, which is really important these days.
It's been really interesting getting this deep into their world. We've learned a lot, from their financials to their plans for the future. What stands out to you the most?
I think it's how proactive they are. They're not just reacting to what's happening now, they're trying to figure out what's coming next and getting ready for it. Whether it's going into new regions or making things in-house, they're always thinking ahead.
I agree. That's what separates the companies that just survive from the ones that really thrive. So anyone listening who's interested in BKT or even just how companies handle these global markets, there's a lot to learn here.
Definitely. And remember, this is just the beginning. Keep digging into the information, exploring, and forming your own opinions. That's how you get the best insights.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into BKT. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those brains working.